my ancestor came from Ettlinger, with one of the first Jews that settled in Karlsruhe. Now let me put it to you this way. I found out over here that Ettlinger and the center of Ettlinger and the center of Karlsruhe is 3 miles, you know. But they make it a big deal over here, you know, on it. But he settled, and of course in 1800 he moved there in 1715, and in 1800 everybody had to take on a surname, and my ancestors took on the name of Ettlinger, coming from Ettlingen. It was not the only one. There were 3 other families that took on that particular name. It was common for a lot of German Jews to take on the name of the place where they came from, you know, Frankfurter, Hamburger, you know, on it, Berliner. I remember over here that when I was 7 years old, Hitler came into power, and my folks immediately, the business that my father was in partnership with somebody, elegant women's fashion store, was boycotted and came to an end. And the fact that there was no more economic life for us in Germany, which meant over here that they had to look for another place in the world.
Do you remember the last night before you fled from Germany? We've read that you were the last boy to give him the bar mitzvah in Germany before the Kristallnacht.
Oh yes. I became bar mitzvah, and the political situation was so dark that the question came up, when would we be leaving? You know, I mean, we had all the papers and all that. That was not the problem. The rabbi recommended that we leave that afternoon. For a rabbi to recommend that you travel on Saturday, man, that's a sin, you know, in the Jewish religion. But my father decided we'll leave the next morning, because this would be the 25th of September. I was bar mitzvah on the 24th. He would leave on the 25th, and the ship did not leave until October 1st out of Rotterdam, Holland, so we had some time. And he left because he saw on the street, on the main street of Karlsruhe, Kaiserstraße, where we lived, that there were a lot of soldiers walking around, he said. And having been a soldier in the World War I, he said, war is not going to start tomorrow. So we left on next Sunday, 25th, and of course 2 days later there was a famous meeting between Prime Minister Chamberlain of Great Britain and Adolf Hitler, in which Chamberlain gave away the part of Czechoslovakia, Sudetenland. It was a delaying action. Chamberlain realized that the British were not prepared to fight, and so to him this was a delaying action on his part in order to get the British finally over here to prepare themselves for war, you know. And it delayed the start of the war by 11 months. War started September 1st, 1939. And my parents and my two younger brothers ended up landing in New York Harbor Hoboken on the 9th of October 1938. I recently realized over here that the older people could not make it out, you know. No country wanted somebody in who was older than 65 because that meant over here they had to be on welfare, you know, which they didn't. Was tough enough over here coming without the government having to come along and give a lot of money. But I still remember the first night that we spent in this country. The ship, we had my folks, they made every effort to get out of Europe, which was on the verge of going to war when we left. And I remember that when we landed here, our sponsor, you needed a sponsor to come here. The sponsor picked us up. He was a wealthy stockbroker, and he picked us up in a limousine. And that was the first time in my life that I traveled in a car, because you didn't need, you know, living in a center of Karlsruhe, you didn't need a car, you know. That was very unusual. And the car drove at that time from the dock through the Lincoln Tunnel, you know, 4 miles of going into the tunnel. That was and when they got out over here, they came into New York, and first time in my life I saw skyscrapers, 20 and 30 stories out after we got out of Lincoln Tunnel, you know. And then the car took us to through Times Square. Well, I got news for you. There were no neon lights in Karlsruhe, but there were plenty of neon lights in Times Square, you know. And then he took us to a restaurant chain over here. I don't think it exists anymore. Horn and Hardart. They served sandwiches there and soup. And we were given, the three of us were told we're going to have chicken gumbo soup. That's what I remember from my first evening in the USA. Yeah, when we left Germany, I 13 years, you know, 12 and a half years old, realized we're not going to come back to Germany, that our life over here and for the family in Germany was ended, and that we were going to become Americans. And I, since that particular time, really felt that I am one of the patriotic American. I believe over here, you know, what this country offers to its citizens, and I'm have been appreciative that I got the opportunity to become an American. I went back where at the World War II in the Army as a buck private. I was sent back here, was pulled out of going into the Battle of the Bulge, and they changed my designation from an infantryman to an interpreter, and they sent me on the way from middle of France, Belgian border. But I found myself in Munich, and where somebody told me that this group is looking for somebody who could be fluent in German. the next day, I volunteered to the man. I didn't know anything what it was all about. All I knew that they needed somebody who was fluent in German, and I volunteered, and turned out to be I volunteered to Lieutenant Jim Romer, who was in charge of the Monuments, Fine Arts, and Archives section of the United States Army, and he put me to work, and they within the last 10 years, instead of Monuments, Fine Arts, and Archives section, became the Monuments men.
Can you tell us the story about the painting that was given back to the Kunsthalle, the art gallery in Karlsruhe?
Well, most of the boxes contained, in these two mines, most of them contained works of art that belonged to German museums and art galleries over here. 900 out of the 41 belonged to France, mostly over here. And one of the museums that stored their contents was the museum from Karlsruhe. As a Jewish boy, I was never able to come and see it during the time that I lived there, you know? No Jews. Their masterpiece was a self-portrait of Rembrandt. And if you take a look in the back over here, you will see that particular one. We prepared ourselves to govern German municipalities, and I was assigned over here to the one in Heilbronn, where the two mines were located.
So you've been to quite a couple of cities like Karlsruhe and Baden-Baden after you returned. How did you experience going back?
Well, when I went back to Karlsruhe, there was nobody there, you know. It was bombed out, you know. Had been bombed out. I visited, I saw the apartments, I saw the places where I lived, and I got photographs of the house, the building in which the last one was the building on Kaiserstraße, in the main street over here on it, and it was bombed. And you could see the window of the bedroom in which my two brothers and I were sleeping in the window, but the top of the building had gone, and the building next to it was strictly the outside wall, but the roofs and the floors were gone. And I went back over here to the building where I was born. That was still standing. I got pictures of that. And the building I stayed in an apartment house that was still standing, but nothing else. And I didn't see anybody, you know. It was in 1945.
After George Clooney produced the famous film about your work, I think your life might have changed a little bit, because all the newspapers, all the TV stations reported about it. How was it after that?
My life changed, not a little bit, changed a hell of a lot.
And how did it change?
Well, I was being interviewed and photographed and videos over here, you know, on it. So they rightfully have let the world know what we did. By we, this country and other countries, that instead of taking things, we returned it. We spent the time, and as it turned out to be, I'm the only healthy, living monuments man around. So that put a little bit more emphasis. And hey, I got free transportation to the White House to fly over Europe, over here. I will not complain about what a great gift I was given. Well, I hope I understand the way they tore down a lot of new buildings and put on more, so it looks like a city that's growing and becoming, showing their affluence, and I hope they keep it up.
If you could give an advice to future generations, what would that be?
Well, I think they gotta come along and learn and adapt a life here of peace in the world. In order to do that, we gotta come along and respect each other, and that's the way of how to lead a better life. I gotta. Unlike here, what is happening today in the Middle East, in which they spent their life over here hating each other. But I know when I went back in Germany, that's what I realized that's what they've learned. You know, to learn over here not to do what Hitler preached.